Welcome to this episode of The Pissed Off Professor. Now, here he is, Dr. Chris Harvin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We have an interesting topic today. This story has blown up all over LinkedIn over the last couple weeks with a lot of people expressing opinions. The University of Michigan is changing how their freshmen are graded. Or are they? Let's talk about it. It's important to get into the details. Here is what I know about Michigan's program based on publicly accessible documents. The short story is this. Some freshmen will have their grades hidden for their first semester coursework. I say some because this only applies to freshmen in the first semester of Michigan's School of Literature, Science, and the Arts, LSA for short. So this does not apply to all incoming freshmen. The plan is to pilot this, quote, LSA first semester grade covering pilot program, end quote. It's a mouthful, in fall of 2027, so about a year from this recording. Before I get into the specifics, let me mention why Michigan is doing this. In short, according to the Wall Street Journal, the dean of LSA, Rosario Saballo, is expressing a concern about the mental health of incoming freshmen. Ostensibly, this is a way to take pressure off these students as they acclimate themselves to university life. As part of a larger, quote, student success initiative, unquote, this program is designed to reduce academic pressure and competition and encourage students to take more intellectual risks. Also, Michigan isn't the first or only school to do this. Wellesley College began an extremely similar program in 2014 that became permanent in 2020. Other schools with similar programs include MIT, Swarthmore, and Caltech. So how does Michigan's program work? Students in the School of Literature, Science, and the Arts enroll in classes as they normally would. The program doesn't limit what classes a student can take. They could pursue easier classes or more difficult classes that may serve as prerequisites for other courses required by their major. There's no restriction. Over the course of the semester, students complete work normally and receive graded feedback normally. At the end of the semester, however, the professor will assign normal letter grades to the student, but those letter grades will not appear on the transcript. On the transcript, only a P for pass or an NC for no credit will appear, and the grades will not be factored into GPA for that student. The letter grades will still be retained by the university for the purpose of academic awards, scholarships, advising, etc., but the letter grades will never be attached to the GPA. The student does not have the ability to choose to use those letter grades. This will be discussed in a bit. It's important to note that this program is significantly different than traditional pass-fail options that many, if not most, universities offer students in various ways. These are programs where the student chooses to take a class and be graded as pass-fail. Like I said, universities each have their own requirements for these programs. And right now, even my university is really digging into the requirements because there were adjustments made for COVID that have hung around, and we're contemplating whether or not we need to make some changes. The first thing I'm concerned about is that students in this program have no choice. Now, again, this only affects students in the School of Literature, Science, and the Arts at the University of Michigan. But if I am a student, I don't like that I don't have a choice in this matter. No matter how well I do, my grades will be hidden and will not impact my GPA. Now I realize there are some students that will like this, but I will address that in a second. The students who are good performers have no ability to have that good grade positively impact their GPA. Sure, this is only one semester, and if they performed well in one semester, they're likely to perform well in other semesters, right? Well, that depends. In other words, this program essentially penalizes the good performer because they cannot benefit, at least in terms of impacting GPA, from a good grade. If you are an incoming freshman facing this program, what kind of courses are you going to choose? Are you going to choose easier gen ed type courses like some low-level English or math courses? Or are you going to save those for later and take the more difficult classes during this period when the grade, as long as you pass, won't have a negative impact on you? And if you take the more difficult classes and only get a pass, are you prepared enough to move forward? At least Michigan does keep the actual letter grades to use in terms of advising. I am really concerned that this program will have an effect on what classes are chosen by these students in their first semester. I'm also concerned that because they are essentially incentivized to take the more difficult courses, they may actually suffer more of the exact anxiety that the program is trying to avoid. What I'm really concerned about is that this program encourages students who may be better served waiting, taking a gap year, and not coming to school right away. This is frankly an idea that needs to gain more traction. There's nothing wrong with a student stepping back and saying, maybe I need a little time before I take this on. We need to support these students in that decision. We need to normalize that decision. We need parents who are willing to allow their kids to make that kind of choice. There's nothing wrong with that. Coming to college is an awfully expensive experiment if your kid is really not ready. We in higher ed are not here to help your kid learn how to learn. They should be learning how to learn before they get here. You as parents need to be strong enough to say, why don't you wait? And kids, you need to be strong enough to say, I'm not ready for this yet. Maybe I should wait. Again, nothing wrong with that. If you really care about the mental health of these kids, you should have no problem with the comments I'm making. But here comes the pissed off professor part. I worry that U of M is doing this simply to get more bodies in the door, despite whether they should be in there or not. I've seen it before. Enrollment is everything. Student readiness be damned. Heck, most universities at some level had eliminated entry tests to be able to get accepted into the program. We continue to make it as easy as possible to get in the doors because we know once a student is in the door, it's much easier to keep them there. Retention is easier than brand new enrollment. People in HR know this. They know it's easier and cheaper to keep an employee than to find a new one. Universities are smoking the crack of enrollment, often to the detriment of student success. Maybe these students would be better served taking a year or two at a local community college or never going to college. Nothing wrong with that either. By the way, I don't think U of M is giving any sort of tuition discount for this. You are paying full tuition for the privilege of not having your grades count. I can't get past the thought that Michigan really doesn't care about these students. They care about enrollment, and this is another way to continue the trend of making it as easy as possible for any student to become part of the higher education machine. It's really not about the student, and that's another reason I am the pissed off professor.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Pissed Off Professor. Don't forget to subscribe and share this with anyone you think would enjoy this. If you want to contact Chris with questions, comments, or show suggestions, email him at poprof@icloud.com. Again, that's poprof@icloud.com. Thanks again.